Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Not too long ago, I did a video talking about some of the forgotten plastic baits that are out there. And for the most part, still very much available. They just don't seem to get the angler recognition that they did when they first came out, or for not necessarily when they just came out, but for a long period of time. These are baits that had a huge following and they just kind of seemed to dwindle off as new products came out, and the longer it passed, it seemed like anglers started to just progress to different baits. But I wanted to point out the ones that I thought still very much had a place in at least my tackle box, and I think a lot of anglers out there that are new to the sport right now don't even know about them because nobody's really talking about them. So I thought it would be worthwhile to just kind of talk about some of the old forgotten plastics. And when I did that, I asked you guys out there, the viewers, if you'd like me to do it with some hard baits as well. And the reality is there are tons and tons of hard baits to talk about. And since you guys wanted me to do a hard bait one, here we are. We're going to talk about some forgotten hard baits. And I chose ones that are still available on the market. Now, what I mean by that is there are a lot of really good baits that were produced for a long period of time and then were discontinued. So you can't necessarily buy them anymore. In this case, I wanted to talk about ones that are still on the market so that you could pick them up if you wanted to. And I'll put links for each of these in the video description if you want to support the channel. But these are ones that I have just used for my entire career. Still use them now, still use them at the professional level at times. And they're ones that I just continue to try to put back into my rotation. And every time I do, I catch a lot of fish on them. So they are still very, very good at catching today's fish when they were great at catching fish 30 years ago. So let's just dive right into this. You know, there's no particular order to these. The first one I'm going to talk about is this guy right here, the Storm Chug Bug. Man, when this thing came out, it was probably the hottest topwater bait on the market. They had a song, oh, the spittin', poppin', walkin' thing they call the Chug Bug. I had a t-shirt with it on it. Like, it was a really hot topwater bait. And it still is kind of an underground topwater bait. There's a lot of pros that will have these tied on. And I think most people, I think, prefer the older version, but the new ones are really good too. You catch a ton of fish on the new ones as well. This is a newer one. And what I mean by new is Rapula bought Storm lures. I'm going to say at this point, it probably was like 15, 20, 25 years ago. It seems like it was yesterday, but it probably was closer to 20 years. And some people say they changed around the plastic. The same thing with like the Storm Wiggle Wart. There's a very much an old school following for the old version versus the new version. Well, the Storm Chug Bug's kind of the same way, but the new version is very, very good still. And there's a lot of pros that still catch a ton of fish on these, and they don't really talk about it. It's kind of like that underground secret, but it's a great topwater bait because it walks the dog extremely well. It's got that cup mouth, so if you want to use it as a popper, you can go ahead and do that. It comes with, in my opinion, the best tail material, which is Flashabou. I think that Flashabou does an amazing job at mimicking bluegill tails. You get that kind of that turquoise iridescent look to it. Just a killer bait. So you can work it straight back to the boat like you would, say, a walking bait like a Zara Spook, or you can twitch it in place and get it just to move side to side without moving it. Great bait for generating strikes. I don't know why we've necessarily moved away from it, other than the fact that it's been around for so long that anglers just slowly move on to other baits. But it's still very much a bait that a lot of anglers use. So that's the Storm Chug Bug. That's like just one of the baits that's got a soft spot in my heart. I love that thing. Another one is the Floatin' Rapula. So the Floatin' Rapula, now this comes in so many different sizes. You can get the little tiny ones all the way up to the giant 3-hook versions. I don't know if they still make the husky size or not, but these are just great floating minnows that I don't know that they necessarily, I don't recall like in a tournament world them ever having this huge following. I'm sure probably in the early years of, say, Bassmaster, there were a lot of guys that probably fished them. And I've heard stories about guys like drilling holes, putting lead into them to actually make them suspend or sink. But the reality is these are just great, great baits. Now for me, it's one of the baits that I started fishing at a very, very young age. And I didn't necessarily fish it probably the way most people did, which was cast and reel it. I actually used it more as a topwater bait where I would throw it out to say next to a clump of pads and I would just twitch it on the surface. You know, you twitch it, it would make rings, you'd wait till the rings disappear, I'd twitch it again, and then I would reel it back. And yes, I caught some fish reeling it straight back, but generally I caught fish as a topwater bait. But it's very, very good as a retrieve bait, as a jerk bait. It's really good just as a topwater bait. All the sizes can be major players. I really like them still in today's world in areas where I'm fishing really shallow water, where say a normal suspending jerkbait will hit bottom all of the time. I'm talking where I'm fishing it in like 3 foot of water. I'll also fish it if I've got areas where I have a carpet of grass and then I've got like 1.5 foot of water from the top of the grass to the surface. Great to fish through there because these baits don't dive deep. They dive a couple of feet and they float very high because they're balsa. But just a great bait. All the different sizes. Definitely a bait that I think a lot of us have fished with. But again, I think today's newer generation doesn't know the power of that bait. It's also silent. And I think that comes into play too, where in today's world, everyone wants big, loud rattles. And it seems like a silent jerkbait can be deadly at times. So that's one that I absolutely love. Another one kind of along those lines is the Smithwick Rattlin Rogue. So this was kind of one of the big suspending jerk baits when they first came out, pre like the Megabass Vision 110, which kind of changed the jerk bait world. But this thing still has a very good time and place. I love it because it's got a bunch of different BBs in it, and it makes a very different sound than most of your traditional jerk baits. So especially in today's world where most of your jerk baits have a good weight transfer system, this doesn't have that, which the negative is they don't cast well. There are not great baits to cast. I always use these on spinning reels just from the standpoint of I can cast them further, and they flutter in the wind. But the BBs in it create an entirely different sound, and there are times where it seems like they want a Rattlin Rogue more than any other jerkbait. So I always carry a bunch of these with me, and if I'm on a good jerkbait bite, I'm always rotating it in to see if I can generate a few extra bites on that. Again, that's another one that a lot of pros still throw. Doesn't get talked about. Definitely still catches a bunch of fish. Man, and before like the Vision 110, that was kind of the deal. So that's a good one. Another one, I mean, some of you might not consider this a hard bait, but you gotta start looking at a bunch of your different MEPS baits or inline spinners. This is the MEPS Bronze Slammer. So this is like an updated model of some of the older MEPS, like the Aglia series, and just the different inline spinners. This one's a much higher quality. It's meant to be fished for smallmouth and largemouth and really generate strikes and be able to be put up to the battle. So it's a little bit heavier duty. I've done videos on this where you guys see me just crush smallmouth and northern. They catch everything. They literally catch everything. And inline spinners, in my opinion, have just, again, been kind of pushed to the side. Now, if you're a new angler or you've got young kids that want to catch fish, the smaller inline spinners can be dynamite. I'm talking, you know, your little 1/3 ounce, little 1/4 ounce, just the little guys, because they catch everything. They'll catch bluegill, they'll catch perch, they'll catch crappie, they'll catch bass, walleye, pike, muskie. I mean, if you really look at the inline spinner, it's one of those baits that they make them from that big for tiny trout all the way to that big for muskie, and they catch pretty much every game fish that's out there. And when I say they catch them, they're like, honestly, they're one of the better baits for each species. You just got to know where to throw them and know how to fish them. But to me, they've been just completely forgotten about. Now, I will tell you, in the North Country, like Lake Champlain, in my neck of the woods, Wisconsin, Minnesota, there are a select group of us that love this bronze slammer. This is one of the really my preferred colors with the chartreuse and white on it, where we are burning this over flats for smallmouth. And there are days where this is the only thing I'm generating strikes from. And when I say strikes, I'm saying you got to hold on to the rod, because it's that whole They come up out of nowhere, absolutely hammer it. And if you're not securely holding your rod, they will rip it out of your hands. It's very much similar to like the spinnerbait bite, where you hear people talk about fishing a chartreuse bladed spinnerbait for Great Lakes smallmouth. This is kind of the new version, and I like it because you can burn it faster. Man, it's just a really good bait, and people aren't doing it. And this is, you know, this, I don't know how long inline spinners have been around, but you can go way back to the pre-1900s. Fluger, I think, was one that was making a big one at that time. I'm not sure when MEP started, but I think they were early in that time period as well. Regardless, this is just one that I've had absolutely great success with. Maybe I'll attach that video to the end of this video so you can watch the one that I did with the bronze slammer. And then the last one, another old school one. This is one that a lot of people joke about. It's the Jitterbug. The Jitterbug is still a great topwater bait. And with this, I'm going to throw in the Hula Popper into the same category, because a lot of people always make fun of, like, you know, you ask them what they catch them on, they'll be like Jitterbug or Hula Popper, right? And both those baits have been around forever. They have caught so many bass, and they still catch bass. And, you know, this is an older one. You can see based on the hardware and the hooks that are on it, this is just an older Jitterbug. But they have new versions, and I've done videos with these too. So this is the jointed Jitterbug 2.0. They've got the Hula Popper 2.0 with these really cool color schemes. They got feathered treble hooks. They're just killer baits, and they still really catch fish. Man, it's funny too, because I feel like a Jitterbug is a bait I find quite a bit. I actually found one a few years ago. I was probably 5 miles offshore on Lake Erie. This was for the Pro Circuit Super Tournament on Lake Erie. We went out of Sandusky Bay, and I was literally 5 miles offshore fishing for smallmouth with like a drop shot. And I just looked down, and there's a black Jitterbug floating, like literally just floating by the boat. And I picked it up, and I just laughed to myself, because I'm like, there are so many people that still fish them, you know, whether they're old school anglers, you know, and by that I mean people that have had them in their tackle box for 40 years and they just picked one up and put it on, or whether they're new people that are throwing it and still catching a pile of fish. The reality is the Jitterbug and the Hula Popper still catch a pile of fish, and they're really just kind of used as a joke term. I feel like people always just kind of joke about it, but they catch fish, and they've got these new versions out, which are really cool too. So these are, I mean, that's 5 baits that, in my opinion, if there was some way to calculate the number of bass and game fish that they've all caught, they're probably way up towards the top of the list in terms of total number of fish caught. And part of that's because they've been around forever, but part of that's because they've been withstood the test of time. Most of these baits have been out now for, I mean, I'm going to guess 40 years, if not, you know, more. I mean, the youngest one is probably the Chug Bug, and I remember that one when I was a little kid. So from that standpoint, we're looking at 40 plus years, and they still catch fish today. Most people just don't use them. So that's 5 forgotten hard baits that you guys wanted me to do based on the one that I did on the soft baits. Let me know in the comment section, what are some of your favorite hard baits that you think have been forgotten about? Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and stay tuned. New video coming out tomorrow.